Welcome, everybody. JRI back here again. My name is Matthew. Toby Pierce from Tag Oil is joining us today for an update, an exciting update at that. If you are not familiar with Tag, I believe it was back in December, episode 16 was the introduction. But Toby is coming back to us to discuss some exciting updates from Tag's project in Egypt, targeting the Abu Roash formation. And I guess so this will be, again, if you're not familiar with the story, maybe it would make sense to jump back to the previous episode, but for now, I think we'll just jump right into it. Toby, thank you for coming on, first of all. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Matthew. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, excellent. No, I do. Always appreciate the time you take to make it here with me. So I guess, like I say, this is going to be mostly on your preliminary information on your very first vertical well. First question right off the bat maybe is just a question around you released, I believe the number was 500 barrels, but why no specific IP24 number? Why was that something that you decided to not provide to the market?
Sure. So there were multiple reasons behind that. The number one was for competitive reasons. We just want to keep everything reasonably quiet until we have more data. In addition, we were looking at a whole host of different operating parameters. So we're bringing the well on. We'd have the well on for 30 minutes. We'd have the well on for 4 hours, playing with different choke sizes, trying to get the well to clean up. It was flowing naturally, no problem. We ended up curtailing the natural flow period quite quickly. And the reason for that is we had a rental frac string in the hole, which was costing us a fair amount of money. We wanted to get that out. We had access to a service rig more quickly than we thought. So we ran in production tubing with an ESP on the production tubing. And we wanted to give the market a sustained 30-day test. I could probably get the ops guys to flow the well 500 barrels a day or, 50 barrels a day, depending, right? So depending on what the day was, choke size, etc. So we don't want to mislead the market with a flashy number. We want to put out what a legitimate number is and then provide all the context and color behind that.
Mm-hmm. And you can plot with much greater degree of confidence off an IP30 number than 24 anyway. So
correct.
Very well. Yeah, very well. So maybe more of a question that's maybe more pertinent than that is, what have the results so far done for your confidence intervals in terms of what your expectations were for this?
Yeah, I have to say, the frac itself was textbook. It's about the only thing we've done that's gone off without a hitch at all. Like it did, I don't want to jinx ourselves for the future, but we were very happy with how it took the frac. We were able to pump 110 tons of sand and over 4,000 barrels of liquid. And it just, it went right to design. So, of course, we made a fair amount of our assumptions off the Eagle Ford as an analogy, and it held very, very true to that. So, it's not a direct comparison. There are some variations. It's about 80%. But what we like about what we took away from the frac is that this rock is very frackable and it will deliver large amounts of oil. And the Abu Roash is a very viable reservoir for us to target in the future.
Maybe just kind of continuing on the same stream of thought here. I mean, in terms of just knowledge that you've gained, any surprises or confirmations? I mean, to the upside or downside, I know that this is material information and it's going to be under the hood for a while yet for us, but anything that you can kind of speak to in that regard for us?
I don't think there were any really big surprises from our standpoint. We were able to, I think the big takeaway that we as we step back, the big takeaway is we've really got to get our logistics down. And in this particular instance, the well logistics work quite well. We have solid Egyptian partners that have assisted us. The group that helped us provide the frac did an excellent job. But I think the one thing that the positive was the logistics worked, but when you go from one stage, a vertical frac to, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 stages in the horizontal, it's going to be a pretty big logistical leap. So we've definitely got to get focused on that. I think we were surprised at how well the frac went away. So I think that's a positive. No real negatives per se from that standpoint.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in that regard, I mean, having your thesis confirmed from exploration is a nice touch. So in the end, it is what you were hoping it to be, which for people following the story is potentially very exciting, right? Just on, again, same vein here. This is obviously what a lot of people want to know about or kind of glean what we can from you, right? But just, again, knowing it's material, knowing that this is going to be something that you can't just give me the direct answer, but can you share with us decline rates or current production rates? I know that you mentioned that you could kind of choke it off at will a little bit, but I mean, is there anything in that arena of knowledge that you could share with us right now?
So I have to be careful, but I guess there's a couple of generic statements I can make. The well is behaving much like a conventional well from a flow rate perspective would in Egypt. It's not the headline numbers aren't massive, but at the same time it's consistent. We see the well is heavily choked back at the moment. So we're producing at a fairly flat, really no decline, no change in pressure. Although you wouldn't expect that really in the first week. I mean, if you had a substantial change, you'd be a little bit concerned, I think, probably. But certainly from all the indications, things are running reasonably flat. Eventually we will have enough data. I don't think even off the IV30 we'll get a general sense of what things might be declining at. Ultimately, we need 3, 4, 5, 6 months to really start to make an accurate assessment of what the well will ultimately produce, sort of the EUR type range.
So maybe at this point, May 24th, mid-afternoon, how many barrels have you pumped and sold at this point? This is exciting. Obviously, you're getting into cash flow. I mean, is that a number that you have off the top of your head, or do you have a notion of?
Well, it's a reasonable amount, enough that we're definitely keeping track of it all. We sold barrels in April. We're selling barrels in May. You can. Beyond that, probably can't say too much. But we're producing back to the plant at the moment, and we're a reasonable amount of their production at the moment. So.
And then maybe just one more on this, and I know that due to the nature of this being brownfield, that is well understood field from that regard. But composition of the oil, I think it came out as medium crude. Again, is that what you were expecting? Is that what you were hoping for?
Yeah, we had a pretty good indication of what the oil would be, oil quality would be. It came in on the upper end of what we expected, 23-degree API. No real nasties of any sort in there. No metals, it's no large amounts of sulfur or H2S or anything deleterious.
Yeah, excellent. So I guess then now we'll transition, the discussion around past news, maybe transitioning into discussion around the future here. I mean, I guess generic question for you, maybe just what's next? What's next for you right now immediately?
Yeah, I mean, so the market may feel like we're not doing too much. There's a big push on right now to get all our logistics sorted for the horizontal. So, for example, we've ordered the long lead items, drill pipe, drill bits, all the necessary equipment to bring into country if it's not available. There is quite a bit of equipment available in country. Working on building the lease for the horizontal. We're obviously working on the production end of things to make sure that we put our best foot forward for the IP30 announcement in mid-June. We're working on a number of different potential acquisitions. Our view, and we have no real color other than, initial chats have been positive, but our view is that this is the time to pick up additional acreage in and around our Bed 1 asset, and we're talking to a number of operators on that specific topic.
There's a couple of threads here that I'd like to circle back with. Maybe I'll just put a pin in the acquisition phase for now, because that's a different ball of wax. But do you want to mention, long lead items? I know that these days that's a challenge, right? I know that part of what sold me on your story was that you are, very centrally located in terms of the industry, right nearby Middle East there, MENA. Potential delays, what are you waiting on? What's left for you to acquire? And then maybe after that, I'll ask you about the rig itself, if it's back or warm stacked or anything like that. So in terms of ordering or maintenance, what are we expecting, or is there potential for delay?
Not on any of the we'll get to the rig in a minute, but on all the items that we potentially need, they're either available in country and or are reasonably readily available. You can get virtually anything you need. The supply issues that occurred 2 years ago are starting to mitigate themselves, and whether that's we're not quite 100% sure why, whether there's just more supply available, perhaps the demand for drilling steel, etc., is not as high as people expected, but there's readily available inventory in Texas, in China, in Europe, and of course in Egypt as well, in the Middle East region. So we don't see any of the components as a bottleneck, other than drill rigs. Drill rigs are fairly hard to come by in Egypt up until about July timeframe, and it has to do mainly with the Egyptian budget cycle. It's June to June. So everyone's trying to get their wells in towards the end of their fiscal year, their budget year, and then all of a sudden, in July, things start to free up again. So drill rigs we're looking at are all operating drill rigs on other locations. We're talking to a number of companies that are drilling away, and we need a slot of, say, 60 days. And if we could peel a rig out from somebody that needs to take a pause, maybe they need to step away, look at their exploration results, their production results, and want to take a 60-day break, that's what we're looking for. And we're looking for a fairly heavy-duty rig, between 1,500 and 2,000 horsepower. There's a lot of steel that'll be going in the hole, and I'm not an expert on this end of things, but the guys are telling me that we need something with a significant amount of horsepower to make sure we can lift all that steel and drill the horizontal appropriately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting question around lead items and how to acquire them and what to do. And obviously that's a big mitigating risk, or the ability to not worry about that. I guess for me, again, as an investor, in an exploration company, you always know that time deadlines are, best estimates given at the time that they were given. I think that I think there was a news release you were anticipating a June spud. I mean, based on what you said, is it realistic maybe that might get pushed back to July, just based on kind of the context you provided there, or are you still anticipating that you'll be able to start in June?
I mean, well, I'll phrase it in that, it in any jurisdiction in the world, whether you're in Egypt or elsewhere, there can always be delays, and there always seems to be delays. That being said, we're still targeting the end of June, and we'll update the market if we feel that timing has slipped. We haven't been great at keeping timelines, but we've also been moving. We signed the block in October, right? So, we've been moving incredibly quickly and learning as we go on how to navigate, all the local suppliers, all the, Cineo and his team have drilled 700 horizontal wells in Albania, but it's all new to them in Egypt. So the drilling end of things and the, making the well go where it needs to go, testing the well, fracking, that's all pretty straightforward. It's figuring out, who the suppliers are and who you need for various things, who you need for backup, who's the busiest and may not, arrive on location in time, etc. So there's we learned a ton off that vertical well, and we hope to improve on timing and delivery of execution for sure going forward. And that will naturally occur as we build our own relationships and have a bigger track record in Egypt.
Which you and I chatting just offline before we started here. That's what you said to yourself, right? In Egypt, building those relationships, right? Which just helps with anything once you have that personal connection, right? I guess maybe I'll follow this up then. I think you already mentioned, you said it's roughly 60 days, but once you get down there and get spudded, 60 days to drill. Is that your estimation or timeline for your first horizontal?
Sure, anywhere from 45 to 60 days. And that's being fairly liberal with a bunch of extra time baked in. It's a new well for us. So we obviously need to land the horizontal in the exact right location, put our best foot forward. Not saying that other people, we've got corners or anything like that, but at the same time, we're going to take probably extra time in this specific well. In addition, we're going to do a lot of testing that we might not do on future wells, perhaps sidewall cores, logging, just a whole host of different things to give us more information. It's a balance between turning this into a great big science project versus making the well commercial. But at the same time, we do need to collect the data to really help us drive efficiencies in the future. Because ultimately, it all comes down to economics at the end of the day, and the lower you can drive your costs and remain safe, of course. But the lower you can drive your costs, the better off you'll be and the more profitable the wells will be.
Well, maybe somewhat adjunct to that is a question around, you said, 10 or 15 stages to the next horizontal frac. I guess, you've given us that ballpark number. Maybe I'm just curious, is what's the final determination? What variables are you waiting on? Are you in the well when you decide what the final number will be, or what do you take into consideration when you make that ultimate decision?
So we're planning for 15 to 20 stages. We'll have enough material for up to 30 stages. However, when you drill a horizontal well, it's a fractured dolomitic system, and you'll get zones of natural fracturing. So we just don't know how many zones of natural fracturing occur. And it's fairly redundant to try and frack zones that are already naturally fractured, because the frack will just follow those natural fracture points and fracture sets. So, for example, if we drill a 1,000-meter horizontal leg, which is what we anticipate more or less, plus minus 100 meters, let's say we encounter 15 sets of natural fractures, we will need fewer, artificial fracks in those zones than if we only encounter 2 sets of natural fractures. And that's the variability in the stages. So we'll be able to tell from the MWD or the measurement, the tools, the logging tools that we utilize while drilling, and just drill breaks. Just all of a sudden the drilling speed will speed up, and we'll get better penetration more quickly. That'll give us, and of course we'll get returns of oil and or hydrocarbon signatures as we re-drill through those zones. So not trying to be vague or anything. It's just we're just not sure yet, and there's no point in fracking stuff that's naturally fractured.
No, perfect. So maybe returning, you made the mention of economics, and obviously this is what it's all about. It's it's not a science project, right? Sometimes your geos probably wish it was, but I guess maybe the question for you then is, reasonable but conservative. If we're looking at IP30 from your first horizontal, and you call it a success, what's like a reasonable but conservative IP30 number that you would treat as like a baseline goal that you're looking for from it?
Sure. Anything north of about 1,000 barrels a day from that horizontal is a baseline. If you start looking, we're less worried about the headline rates, though, I have to say, and we're very much focused on how much oil these wells will recover in, say, the first 2, 3, 4 years of their lives, because that ultimately will determine how economic everything is. But if I had to pick a rate, it'd be on or around 1,000 barrels a day. I'd be ecstatic.
Yeah, awesome, good. So maybe we'll just jump around here, but again, M&A, right? I know this is something that in our previous conversation you had mentioned it, and this is something that you let the market know a couple of times, that you are looking for further acquisitions, to growing beyond just exploring Abu Roash F. is there anything you can discuss? Again, fully acknowledging the fact that anything that's actually happening, anything juicy, you can't tell us. But I mean, can you just kind of give us where are you looking? Are you looking only in Egypt or elsewhere? I guess let's just start there. Like geographically, are you Egypt centric, or are you looking in MENA, or where? How far afield are you looking?
Yeah, so over 90% of our efforts are in Egypt at the moment for anything M&A related. If a great opportunity came up in Oman or one of the other, highly prospective MENA regions, we would take a look at it. We're not agnostic. We won't turn a blind eye to a good deal, but we very much are focused in Egypt. And I would say, of the 90%, probably 80% is in and around the Upper Roash, the Western Desert, the plays in the Western Desert that we can see that relate to the Upper Roash and or conventional and unconventional related to that play in and around our existing acreage. Very simply, we have 26,000 acres on bed one. RPS gave us over 500 million barrels of oil in place. Directionally, the more acres we add, theoretically, the more oil in place we can point to. It won't all be the same, so obviously there's some variability, but we want to try and pick up a more meaningful stake. We do have what we have right now is a company maker. It's enough for us to never have another acquisition. Sometimes it's pretty tempting. Not look at anything else, but no. In all seriousness, if we can double, triple, quadruple our position, we'd be very, very happy with that. And it just grows scope and scale for investors and gives us more certainty on running revenue, etc.
And so I think you did touch on this, but is this a matter of you are in the early stages of proving your exploration thesis works, that you're doing this thing that is new to Egypt or newer to Egypt in terms of exploration, in terms of unconventional, and you are looking to expand on your thesis and you're looking for more unconventional targets? Or are you, like you say, kind of more agnostic where if there's a conventional field nearby that you think you can return to, you would? Or what's your preference there?
So all of the above. I mean, and not to be too just general about it, but we see some very high quality unconventional zones in the Western Desert section. We see a lot of opportunity in some of the conventional zones that may hold additional hydrocarbons. We can bring capital into play, and some of the companies in the region can't. So there lies an opportunity, right? And if you can get alignment on how to joint venture or acquire these assets, then you're off to the races. So we've done quite a bit of work. Our geos and engineering have spent a lot of time looking at the entire column, very much focused initially on the Upper Roash, but as we look at more assets, we're getting a better understanding, and by no means experts or anything like that, but we do feel comfortable that we can use fracking to our advantage. And bring some of the technologies that we utilize every day in North America into play in Egypt.
Do you feel that you're starting to catch people's attention when you're over there? I mean, are you a story that's the talk of the town in terms of Egypt drilling, or where are you at? Are you still kind of under the radar?
Yeah, so Egypt is quite a small place. I mean, from a oil and gas perspective, so. While there are probably 3 dozen, 4 dozen companies that are quite active, it is quite easy to get to know people over there. They're keen to learn, and as an industry in general, we don't share a lot of proprietary information, but at the same time, we do share information, and there are scout group meetings and working sessions and the like. So. We've been fortunate to meet a bunch of people, specifically the Egyptian EGPC, the ministry. They've been very supportive. They've been really, really helpful, and inquisitive about what we're doing. They really their primary goal, of course, is to make sure that Egypt has as much oil production as possible, and that's the number one focus for them. They see ourselves as a potential avenue for that, and of course we're very early on, but they're very open, and we find it quite refreshing that we can go in and talk to them, all the government agencies, quite easily.
Excellent. Yeah, not always the case, right? So maybe timeline, right? You mentioned the word preliminary, I think, or maybe I'm just making that up in my own mind, but I mean, where are you at with these conversations? Is this still very much introductory conversations you're having with you said, 80 or 90% of your energy is just right in your locale, in your neighborhood there. Advanced discussions, right? Just still kicking tires. Where are you at in that process?
Fairly serious discussions across the board, but they are fairly preliminary in that, we just have been able to release some results. So I would suggest that just like our investors, the industry is looking at what we'll put out for RIP30 as well, right? We've been fairly guarded about that sort of stuff. So, with select groups, we've probably disclosed a little bit more information under NDA. And we're just trying to actively, push multiple opportunities forward. It is Egypt, things do take time. Both Abby, Sunil, and I were all in Egypt at the same time, which is the first time in a long time. And the primary reason was to push a number of these initiatives forward. Abby's headed back in June. I'll head back at some point in the summer. Sunil's been there and still is there for a big stint. We are looking at hiring. There will be some announcements around some key hires here in the next week or two. And that will also help us push forward our acquisition strategy and help flesh out the team.
And so, you mentioned the phrase company maker for ARF, right? Which is obviously, that's an exciting turn of phrase. So when we, transitioning to acquisitions or M&A, when you have already a pretty exciting, what looks to be an imminent, discovery in terms of commerciality, do you risk splitting your attention, or do you get lost in the weeds, or I guess maybe even, how foundational is the M&A style or side of things to your company? What's your governing philosophy behind your strategy for growth?
Yeah, so it probably depends on the individual you ask, right? We're collective, right? So my GM may give you a different answer than our COO or myself, but the real focus is to try and we don't want to have 18 different assets in Egypt, with a limited amount of time and capital going to each one. We want to try and focus on 2 or 3 things that we feel have a significant chance of success and scalable. If you look at the Roash we have on our bed 1 field, the initial valuations that RPS gave us were off 20 locations. We see multiples of that, for location wise, provided everything works out. So, we've definitely got to keep focusing on that. And not to say you never know when you might encounter a play or an asset that has much better economics and better quality than the Roash. But we feel that based on what we've seen to date relative to the Roash, we're quite comfortable that we've got something that's substantial. And that's why we're focused on building around that asset, and or focused on assets that are similar.
And so maybe, this is a related question. Again, maybe one that I would ask more exploring the philosophy behind your logic, but regarding future growth, is this something where you will let cash flow from, again, assuming exploration success, will you let your flowing wells pay for future growth and kind of work on it slowly like that and deliberately? Or is this something that maybe you would anticipate, returning to the market for further financing for a more aggressive approach. And I guess maybe again, I think it's one of those questions where it could be both under the circumstances. If I'm not putting words in your mouth, but just maybe discuss the rationale or logic or philosophy that would help you dictate your answer, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And, it's the question we wrestle with all the time, right? As stewards and shareholders capital. So there's a scenario if we have a great well, horizontal well, and we're producing a substantial amount of oil, perhaps you just sit there and gather up enough cash flow to fund your future program after that. But the flip side is maybe you raise 10 to 20 million extra dollars and then accelerate your drilling program so you can capture more cash flow more quickly. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be highly dependent on the markets, the outcome of the well, what acquisitions we make, oil price. Ultimately, we want to get to a stage where we do fund everything out of cash flow. And, today I can't see, I don't know what the cash flow profile is going to look like. We can guesstimate. We've done quite a bit of work on that. And so we're reasonably comfortable that, provided the horizontal well comes in where RPS is suggesting it will, we'll have sufficient cash flow to grow off of. But we still may choose to accelerate that and raise some capital. And that's somewhat dependent on acquisitions as well. If you see a great acquisition, you might need additional capital. We're adequately funded for some of our M&A opportunities, plus the horizontal well, with a little bit of cushion. But you really want to make sure you have enough cash at all times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, never going cap in hand to the market, desperate, right? Doesn't end. It rarely ends well, right? Mm-hmm. This is a little bit of a sidestep here. Your old land in Australia, there's Omega. It looks like they've made a decent they've had a kind of an exciting announcement where they had a few hundred meters of potential net pay for nat gas. And then I think you guys have a 3% royalty strapped onto that one. Any comments on that? Is that what you were kind of expecting if you had followed forward with that? Or just care to comment on your old package there?
Sure. Yeah, no. And we're very excited for Omega. To cut that big section of gas. It's probably a little bit more complex than everyone. That package can be very complex. You've got multiple coals and sands and silts, etc. So we obviously wish them all the best. The 3% GOR on there, if we can, and it's the beauty part about an overriding royalty is that we have to put up no capital yet we get to experience, a small percentage of the ultimate upside, right? So for us, we're watching closely and wishing them the best, and we like what we see. The back of the envelope arm waving models that we had for Australia were substantial. Multi TCF in that basin if it works. Obviously, a huge amount of work to be done going forward, but I can't say I'm surprised based on analogous well results in the region, the western flank of the Surat Basin. There were players that had similar type intersections, so I think Omega's on the right track and looks interesting.
Maybe one last one here, and again, a bit of a non sequitur, and I kind of asked you about it prior to recording here as well, and I'll give you an opportunity to answer it on air here. Just one of your investors had asked just about there were some 5-year options that had expired or looked as if they had expired back in April, but now there have been a few insiders coming up on SETI who have managed to exercise their options in May now, and so I was just wondering, or he was wondering, if you could maybe explain just the discrepancy there or why that happened.
Sure. So we were in blackout. We basically put the company in blackout from March timeframe until we announced to the market our results, or the initial results on the well. The options did expire. It was like April 6th or thereabouts. First 2 weeks in April, I believe. there is a provision though in the option agreements that if you're unable to exercise due to blackout, you have 2 weeks following the lifting of that blackout to exercise those options. And so several of our employees had options. Myself, one of the directors, I believe everyone is exercising their options or will have exercised their options in full. And that'll all close by the end of this week.
And always nice to see exercised options as well. So, I mean, this is it from me, Toby. Is there anything that I missed that maybe you want to talk about, or anything you want to say before we depart?
No, just thanks for the support from everybody and the patience as well. It always takes excuse me. It always takes a lot longer than we hope, but getting there, and we're very excited by the initial results.
Yeah, and I think that the market is as well, right? And as I've heard it before 100 times, and I said it myself 100 times, but exploration is boring until it isn't, right? And so I think that's kind of what we're here. That's the stage that we're at with you, right, with Tag. So
yeah, no, and it, while we won't have a massive news intensive summer, my summer's gonna be very busy. Investors probably would like to have a little bit more, but certainly September, October timeframe will be very busy and very active, and there'll be, I believe, quite a bit of news flow, and it'll get quite exciting.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for your time, Toby. I always appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Matthew.
Take care.